The night of her wedding was meant to be a celebration, but the air was thick with tension, a sense of expectation that pressed down like a heavy stone on her chest. She had been dressed in finery that sparkled under the dim lantern light, but the glitter of gold and beads could not mask the unease curling in her stomach. Her husband, a man who wore charm like a mask, smiled with an ease that did not reach his eyes. Around them, the relatives and select guests whispered, exchanged knowing glances, and laughed quietly, as though in on a secret she could not yet see. The room had been arranged carefully. Thick curtains were drawn to block the night air, leaving only the flickering light of lanterns to dance across polished floors. The bed, placed with meticulous precision, seemed more a throne of authority than a place of union. Candles cast long shadows on the walls, creating the illusion of figures moving where there were none, and the faint scent of incense and perfumed oils hung in the air, a mask for the cold calculation that lay beneath. She sensed it immediately, the subtle cues that all was not as it seemed. Her husband's hand lingered too long over hers before releasing it abruptly. The servants avoided her gaze. Even the laughter from the corner of the room seemed rehearsed, carefully timed. Every detail, every gesture felt orchestrated, a trap laid in plain sight. Her instincts, honed by years of observing the hidden motives of those around her, screamed that this night was not about celebration, it was about control. They wanted her subdued, made small, and convinced of her own helplessness. Her humiliation would serve as a lesson to anyone who might think to challenge the family's authority, her power contained under the guise of marital ceremony. She felt the weight of expectation pressing on her shoulders, as though each whispered compliment or feigned smile was a chain. She was meant to kneel under invisible commands, to accept their dominance without question, to bend to the will of her husband and the silent judgment of the gathering. Yet, amidst the calculated cruelty, a spark of awareness ignited within her. There was something hidden beyond the obvious, something they had overlooked in their meticulous planning. Her heart, though tight with fear, felt the stirrings of curiosity and defiance. Every movement, every glance, every seemingly innocent detail of the room whispered secrets to her senses. She realized that while they had prepared a stage to trap her, they had underestimated her observation, her intuition, and her patience. As the evening progressed, she allowed herself to remain calm, measured, and composed, appearing to submit while quietly assessing the layout, the reactions of the attendees, and the subtle patterns woven into the night. Each glance toward a shadow, each lingering pause on a certain object, seemed to hint at something concealed, a possibility that the trap itself contained the key to revealing their true intentions, or perhaps even to turning the trap against them. Though they believed her powerless, kneeling beneath the weight of expectation, she sensed that the night held opportunities they had not foreseen. Beneath the forced smiles, the controlled gestures, and the air of dominance, she felt a pulse of possibility, a secret that, if discovered, could change the balance of power entirely. The orchestrated trap was not the end. It was the beginning. As the night deepened, she remained seated, outwardly composed, yet every fiber of her being was alert. The laughter and clinking of glasses continued around her, but her attention was drawn to the smallest details, the irregularities that others dismissed as mere coincidence. The door to the inner chamber, where she was supposed to retire with her husband, seemed slightly ajar before it was hastily closed. The lock, polished and gleaming, had tiny scratches near the keyhole, as though someone had tampered with it recently. She made a mental note, letting the observation settle quietly in her mind. Her eyes swept across the room, noticing subtle cues in the placement of objects. A decorative chest that should have sat flush against the wall was tilted, revealing a faint crack between it and the floor. The curtains, while drawn elegantly, did not hang symmetrically. One edge brushed against the floor as though hiding a secret gap. Even the arrangement of chairs seemed deliberate, some positioned to obscure sight lines, others angled toward corners where shadows pooled unnaturally. It was as if the room itself had been orchestrated to tell a story she was meant to misread. She heard whispers that seemed to float just beyond comprehension, hushed tones from the corners of the hall, the murmurs of servants or relatives exchanging cautious words when they thought no one was listening. Each sound carried a weight, a subtle urgency that her intuition recognized immediately. They were hiding something, not just from her but from one another as well, as if the walls themselves were complicit in concealing the truth. Her husband, ever charming in public, seemed to falter in small, unnoticeable ways. His hand brushed against an object on a side table, then recoiled quickly as though its significance was not meant to be seen. A flicker of unease crossed his expression when he caught her glance, but he quickly masked it behind a practiced smile. Her instincts told her that these minor hesitations were windows into something larger, a carefully layered scheme that extended beyond the immediate display of control. Even the air felt unusual, heavier in certain corners, carrying faint traces of scents that did not belong, perfumes mingled with smoke or oils, almost imperceptible, yet suggestive of hidden rituals or preparations. Each observation deepened the sense that the night was more than it appeared. There were secrets tucked into every crevice, messages left for her to decipher if she only paid attention. As she studied the room, her intuition whispered repeatedly that the orchestrated trap was not merely about humiliation or dominance. There was a hidden pattern, a puzzle waiting to be uncovered, and it was this hidden layer that would determine whether she remained powerless or discovered the leverage that could shift the entire night, and perhaps her life, entirely. The unease she felt was no longer fear alone, it was anticipation, a quiet awareness that the path to understanding and power lay just beyond the surface, waiting for the one who dared to look closer. Once the guests' laughter and clinking glasses faded into distant echoes, she seized a moment of solitude. The room, meant to confine and intimidate her, now became a space for careful exploration. Every shadow, every misplaced object, seemed charged with significance. Her eyes traced the edges of furniture, the seams of the walls, and the corners where the dim light barely reached. Her fingers, delicate yet steady, ran along the surfaces, feeling for anomalies, vibrations, or gaps that might reveal what others had overlooked. It was the ornate chest by the window that first drew her attention. From the outside it appeared ordinary, a decorative piece meant to impress onlookers. Yet something about the grain of the wood, the way a single panel sat slightly raised, tugged at her instincts. Gently, she pressed along the edges and felt a faint hollow beneath one corner. Her heartbeat quickened, not with fear but with anticipation. Carefully, she manipulated the panel, noting how the wood shifted slightly under her touch. A hidden compartment revealed itself, just wide enough for a folded parchment or small trinket. Inside lay an object she could barely believe, a small, intricately carved key, its metal glinting faintly in the candlelight. The key bore symbols she did not recognize immediately but sensed were tied to her lineage. Each curve and etching seemed deliberate, purposeful, whispering of secrets buried long ago. She lifted it reverently, feeling the weight not just of the metal, but of the history and protection it represented. Whoever had placed it here intended it to be hidden, yet not destroyed. Somehow she had been allowed to find it. Beyond the chest, her gaze wandered to the heavy velvet drapes framing the window. The fabric, rich and seemingly decorative, concealed a narrow recess in the wall. As she peered inside, she discovered a series of miniature carvings etched into the stone, lines and spirals, symbols she now recognized from old family stories. They hinted at a connection between the key and something far larger, a legacy her enemies feared she might uncover. Each mark told a story, pointing her toward her family's past, the power that had been systematically suppressed, and the secrets others had hoped to keep hidden forever. Even the smallest details reinforced the realization that this night was orchestrated not merely to humiliate her, but to test her. The conspirators had overlooked what they considered insignificant, assuming her submission would blind her. Yet in their arrogance, they left behind the very clues that would lead her to the truth. Her intuition, honed by years of subtle observation and quiet patience, guided her through the room like a compass, revealing hidden doors and forgotten recesses that concealed fragments of history. As she held the key in her hand, a sense of clarity settled over her. This object was more than a mere artifact, it was a starting point, a link between the past her family had tried to bury and the power she was meant to reclaim. It spoke of betrayal and secrecy, of lessons left by ancestors, and of an opportunity to turn the orchestrated trap into her advantage. Every careful observation and secret discovery was now converging, giving her the tools to transform the night from one of humiliation into one of revelation and empowerment. For the first time she allowed herself a small, confident smile. The conspirators had underestimated her, and the key in her hand was proof that their arrogance could be used against them. The hidden compartments, the cryptic objects, and the subtle carvings all whispered a singular truth. This night held more than cruelty, it held the path to her ultimate discovery. As she held the small, intricately carved key in her hand, memories began to surface, like soft echoes from a distant past. Her mother's voice, gentle yet firm, replayed in her mind, tales of hidden legacies, of sacred objects passed from one generation to the next, kept safe from those who sought power for selfish ends. The stories had always seemed like lessons in caution, meant to teach her vigilance and patience, yet now their significance became startlingly clear. She remembered the long evenings by the fire when her mother spoke of keys, both literal and metaphorical. A key, she had said, can open more than doors. It can unlock truths that others wish buried, powers that are denied to the unworthy. At the time, the words had sounded like riddles or old folk tales, charming but distant. Now, with the physical key pressing lightly against her palm, she felt the weight of their importance. Her mother had been preparing her all along, embedding lessons in stories, guiding her even when she was too young to understand. The whispers were not limited to her mother. Tales from her ancestors, passed down through hushed conversations and sacred rituals, returned to her mind in fragments. Each story emphasized vigilance, the ability to read signs others overlooked, and the courage to act when the moment demanded it. One tale spoke of a woman who had been trapped by those she trusted, only to find salvation in a single object hidden in plain sight. Another recounted a guardian who left messages for her successor, trusting that wisdom and patience would reveal the key when the heir was ready. These narratives, woven together across time, now felt like a map overlaying the key in her hand. Even mentors from her childhood, who had taught her subtle skills of observation and quiet discernment, seemed to speak to her now. Their advice, once seemingly abstract, became practical guidance. Always notice what others ignore, trust the hints left behind by those who came before, and remember that what appears to be ordinary may conceal extraordinary truths. The key was more than a piece of metal, it was a symbol of that guidance, a bridge connecting her to a legacy that had been threatened but not destroyed. As she pieced together these fragments of memory, her understanding deepened. The key's carvings, the hidden compartments she had discovered, the subtle irregularities in the room, all of it aligned with the lessons whispered across generations. She realized that her mother, ancestors, and mentors had never truly left her unprepared. They had embedded wisdom into her very awareness, ensuring that when the moment came she would recognize its significance. A sense of calm determination settled over her. The whispers of the past were no longer abstract stories, they were instructions, reassurance, and a call to action. Every lesson she had absorbed, every subtle hint she had noticed throughout her life, converged now, giving her the clarity to understand the key's true purpose. She was ready to follow where it led, prepared to face whatever traps or challenges awaited, knowing that she carried the insight, courage, and legacy of those who had come before her. In the quiet of the night, surrounded by shadows and the remnants of a trap meant to humiliate her, she felt empowered. The past was speaking to her and she was finally listening. The key was not just an object, it was the first step toward reclaiming her destiny. The small key in her hand seemed to pulse with quiet significance, as though it carried a life of its own. She turned it over, examining the intricate etchings along its shaft and bow, symbols she recognized from her mother's stories, and even older marks that hinted at ancestral custodianship. It was clear now that this key was not ordinary, it had been crafted with purpose, designed to protect secrets too powerful to be left to chance or to the hands of those who sought to exploit them. The weight of it was both literal and symbolic, grounding her while reminding her of the responsibility it carried. As she held the key, fragments of her observations from earlier in the night returned with greater clarity. The subtle irregularities in the room, the hidden compartment behind the dresser, the faint groove in the floorboards, and the slight misalignment of the wall panel, were all connected. The key was the missing piece that would allow her to access truths deliberately concealed, inheritance carefully hidden, and plans intended to harm her thwarted before they could come to fruition. Each discovery built upon the last, creating a pathway that only she could follow because she had noticed what others overlooked. Her mind raced as she considered the implications. The key was a tool, yes, but also a test. Whoever had hidden it had trusted that she would possess the intelligence, patience, and courage to find it. Every step she had taken, the observations, the whispers, the careful examinations, had prepared her for this moment. The key validated her awareness, proving that she was more than just a victim of her husband's and relatives' schemes. She was the rightful heir to knowledge and power that they had sought to suppress. The symbols carved into the key glimmered faintly in the candlelight, and she traced them with her fingertips. Spirals that spoke of cycles of time, arrows that indicated direction, and the ancestral mark that confirmed her lineage, all hinted at the key's true function. It was not simply a physical instrument but a bridge between the past and the present, connecting her to her mother, her ancestors, and the legacy she had been born to protect. She realized that those who had tried to control her, to trap her on her wedding night, had underestimated her. They had assumed that a single night, a display of dominance, could obscure the truths that had been passed down through generations. They were wrong. Her heart thudded with a mix of exhilaration and purpose. The key's potential was vast. It could unlock a hidden room or compartment containing evidence of betrayal, maps of inheritance, or documents confirming her rightful authority. It could reveal who had manipulated events to her disadvantage, and in doing so, it could shift the balance of power decisively in her favor. The very people who had orchestrated her humiliation were blind to the key's existence, blind to the moment when she would reclaim what was always hers. She paused to consider her next steps. Handling the key carelessly could arouse suspicion. Revealing it too soon could alert her enemies. She needed patience, strategy, and timing. The key itself was only the beginning. What she chose to do with it would determine the course of her future. Her awareness of its significance, however, gave her confidence that she was no longer entirely at the mercy of others. She was the one who held the means to expose deception, reclaim her inheritance, and assert her authority. A sense of empowerment filled her as she carefully secured the key. It was more than an object. It was a signal that her agency, her intelligence, and her patience had been recognized by those who had prepared the legacy for her. The balance of power had shifted, though subtly, in her favor. The wedding night, meant to trap her and diminish her, had instead become the night she discovered the instrument of her reclamation. She was ready to move forward, step by step, unlocking the secrets that had been hidden from her, and taking her place as the rightful custodian of her family's legacy. With the key in her grasp, she felt a surge of resolve. The challenges ahead would not be easy, but now she possessed the means to navigate them. Every whisper from the past, every subtle clue she had noticed, converged in this moment. The key was not just a discovery, it was the first tangible proof that she was destined to overcome the trap laid before her and to emerge with her power and heritage intact. As she lingered near the hidden compartment, still holding the key, she became aware of a presence behind her, not threatening but watchful. She turned slightly and noticed one of the guests from earlier, an elder with eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Their gaze lingered on her, not with judgment or amusement, but with quiet acknowledgement, as if they had been expecting this moment all along. In that brief, weightless exchange, she felt a reassurance ripple through her. Someone had noticed her discovery and, more importantly, understood its significance. The elder's recognition was subtle, a slight nod, almost imperceptible to anyone else in the room. Yet it carried a message louder than words. She was not alone. The hidden key, the compartment, the faint traces of ancestral symbols, this person saw it all and knew that she was meant to uncover them. In that recognition, she felt the first sense of shared purpose. Her actions were not merely her own, but part of a larger continuum, guided by those who had safeguarded these secrets before her. Her mind raced, considering the implications. The elder could have reported her immediately, revealing her discovery to those who had plotted the wedding night trap. Instead, they chose to remain silent, offering a subtle signal of support. That small act of acknowledgement carried immense weight. It meant she could proceed cautiously, that there was someone watching over her journey and ready to step in if danger approached. This silent alliance transformed the atmosphere of the night. What had begun as a trap to humiliate her now held the potential for strategy, for reclaiming authority, for turning the tables. The presence of the observant ally emboldened her. She no longer needed to rely solely on intuition and stealth. She had a partner, even if unspoken, guiding and supporting her efforts. The elder's eyes conveyed understanding and patience, a wisdom born of experience that told her the moment to act was approaching, but only when the time was right. Every movement she made, the careful turning of the key, the slight adjustments in her position, the measured attention to her surroundings, was being silently monitored, assessed, and validated by someone who recognized her rightful place in the unfolding events. As the minutes passed, she became more attuned to the elder's cues. A tilt of the head, a soft exhale, the slightest shift in stance, all indicated awareness and readiness. She realized that this person had seen her composure under pressure, had noticed her intelligence in piecing together the hidden elements, and had understood her capacity to wield the key wisely. That recognition alone was empowering, transforming what could have been a moment of fear into one of deliberate calculation and strategic patience. For the first time that evening, she felt a sense of connection beyond the immediate crisis. The allies' silent support was a lifeline, a bridge between her isolated courage and the broader wisdom of those who had preserved these secrets across generations. She understood that while the key was her tool, the observant ally was the safeguard, ensuring that her discovery would not be undone by haste or by the malicious intentions of others. She drew a slow breath, steadying her thoughts, and allowed herself a moment to internalize this quiet alliance. The wedding night, orchestrated to diminish her, had inadvertently revealed not only a hidden power but also the presence of someone ready to recognize and protect that power. This knowledge became as important as the key itself, a reminder that she did not face the challenge alone. The silent acknowledgement of the observant ally was a signal that the unfolding events were part of a greater plan, one in which her actions were both crucial and supported, and that her steps toward uncovering the full truth were being watched over with care and respect. With renewed determination, she adjusted her grip on the key and turned back to the hidden compartment. The observant ally remained a presence at the edge of her awareness, a quiet, steadfast reassurance that she was no longer entirely alone in the task of revealing what had been hidden and reclaiming the power that was rightfully hers. Even as she held the key close, a subtle tension in the room did not escape her. Every movement of her husband, every glance exchanged between the conspirators, seemed fraught with unease. She noticed the way his hand trembled slightly as he poured wine for the guests, the way his eyes darted toward the hidden compartment as if anticipating someone discovering it. It was a fear she could almost taste in the air, a fear that had nothing to do with her obedience or compliance and everything to do with what she now possessed. Later, she moved quietly near the edge of the hall, pretending to adjust her attire, while her sharp eyes and acute awareness observed the subtle signs of panic. Whispers reached her ears, barely audible over the low hum of the celebration. Her husband and his closest allies spoke in hushed tones, their words fragmented but revealing enough to piece together the truth. They were afraid of the key she had uncovered, of the secrets it unlocked, and of the revelation it threatened to bring. The object she had found was not just a relic of the past, it was a weapon against the web of lies they had meticulously spun. Her mind raced as she recalled everything she had learned so far. The traps, the hidden compartments, the whispered warnings from ancestors and mentors. This key was the final link, and now she realized the conspirators themselves had confirmed its power. Their fear validated her intuition. It proved that she had stumbled upon something they never intended her to see. She felt a quiet thrill of vindication. The object she had feared might be insignificant had become the axis on which the entire evening, and perhaps her future, turned. She lingered, still pretending to mingle as fragments of their conversation became clearer. Her husband muttered about losing control and the consequences if she succeeds, while another conspirator whispered about past attempts to secure the object, all of which had failed. They discussed contingency plans, their voices tight with anxiety, calculating how to prevent her from using what she had found. Each word she overheard reinforced her understanding. The key was far more valuable than she had imagined. A tool that could dismantle the carefully constructed facades of authority, control, and deceit. In that moment, she realized that the fear she observed was more than mere trepidation. It was recognition of her growing power. By uncovering the object, she had shifted the balance. The conspirators were no longer in control. She felt a surge of confidence, knowing that she had not only discovered the key but had also understood the magnitude of what it could do. Their fear was proof that the secret they had sought to hide for generations was now in her hands. As the night wore on, she moved gracefully among the guests, her composure untouched by the tension around her. Every glance of worry she intercepted, every whispered panic she overheard, confirmed a vital truth. She held leverage over those who had sought to entrap her. The key was more than a physical object. It was a revelation, a symbol of power that could undo deceit and restore justice. And in knowing their fear, she understood the extent of her advantage. From that point forward, she walked with the quiet certainty of someone who held not just a key, but the ability to unravel schemes, expose lies, and reclaim what was rightfully hers. The conspirators' fear became her guide, illuminating the path she needed to follow, each step measured, deliberate, and filled with the confidence that the object she had found could indeed destroy the web of deception that had been laid against her. After observing the fear and unease of her husband and the conspirators, she withdrew to a quiet corner of the room, her mind racing yet focused. The key she had discovered was not merely a physical object. It was a symbol, a tool, and a weapon of revelation. Every detail of its presence, every subtle tremor she had noticed in her husband's hand, and every whisper she had overheard formed pieces of a puzzle she was now determined to solve. She knew that wielding it recklessly could invite immediate danger, but careful planning could turn the key into an instrument of justice and power. Sitting alone, she mapped out every variable in her mind. She considered the conspirators' positions in the room, their patterns of speech, the moments when they relaxed their vigilance, and the few allies she might quietly rely upon. Timing, she realized, would be as crucial as the act itself. Revealing the key too early could provoke confrontation and risk exposure before she understood its full potential. Waiting too long, however, might allow her enemies to suspect her knowledge or attempt to regain control. She needed a balance between patience and action, observation and decisiveness. Her thoughts turned to the key itself. How had her family hidden it so cleverly? Why had it remained unnoticed for so long, even in a place where deception was routine? She realized that the conspirators had underestimated her, assuming that their plans, laid with precision and secrecy, could not be undone. Yet here she was, with the key in her hands, understanding more than they suspected. Its power was not in brute force but in revelation, revealing lies, exposing betrayal, and unmasking hidden truths. The careful management of this revelation became the foundation of her strategy. She also considered her own strengths. Her composure under pressure, her patience, and her ability to read subtle cues in behavior were tools as essential as the key itself. She would not rely on confrontation alone. Instead, she would use perception, intelligence, and the timing of disclosure to her advantage. Each step she planned was deliberate. Observe, learn, anticipate, and only then act. Every glance, every gesture, and every carefully chosen word could become a part of the unfolding plan, subtly guiding events without revealing her hand. Her mind also turned to potential allies. There was one guest, or perhaps a trusted elder, who had subtly acknowledged her discovery earlier. Their quiet recognition of her action could be instrumental if used correctly. She would not reveal the key to them outright, but their awareness could serve as a safeguard, a silent support that strengthened her position. She weighed the risks carefully, imagining scenarios of both success and failure, preparing contingencies for each eventuality. By the end of her contemplation, she had formulated a plan that combined patience with decisive action. She would wait for the right moment when her enemies were most vulnerable, when the room's dynamics worked in her favor, and then subtly unveil the key's significance. Her approach would be strategic, avoiding direct confrontation until she held the undeniable upper hand. With each detail cemented in her mind, she felt a quiet surge of confidence. The conspirators' fear had given her insight, and the key had provided opportunity. Now, with intelligence and careful timing, she could convert observation into advantage, hesitation into revelation, and secrecy into undeniable power. She stood, her plan clear, knowing that when the moment came, she would act not recklessly but with precision, patience, and the authority that came from understanding both the key and the minds of those who had sought to trap her. She moved through the room with deliberate softness, each step light enough to avoid raising suspicion but intentional enough to gather information. The key, a small yet powerful artifact, remained hidden within her clothing, its cold weight against her skin grounding her focus. She understood that before making any open move, she needed to learn who among the gathered truly stood against her and who might be silently on her side. Testing the waters would determine whether her plan flowed smoothly or collapsed under watchful, malicious eyes. The conspirators, still unaware of the key's discovery, carried themselves with false confidence. She noticed how her husband's shoulders relaxed whenever she appeared passive, how a proud aunt smirked as though victory had been secured, and how a few distant relatives whispered with the smugness of people convinced their scheme would unfold flawlessly. She allowed them that illusion, for illusions made people careless. She began with small gestures, each seemingly insignificant. She shifted closer to the wall where she had found the hidden compartment, pretending to admire a decorative carving. Her husband's eyes snapped to her instantly, a flicker of panic breaking through his otherwise calm mask. One of the conspirators, seated nearby, stiffened for just a heartbeat before forcing a laugh into a conversation. Their reactions confirmed her suspicion. They feared that area specifically. She filed this knowledge away carefully. Next, she approached the lone ally she suspected, the observant elder whose eyes had followed her earlier with a kind of knowing compassion. She did not speak directly or reveal anything, but she brushed her fingers against the elder's sleeve lightly as though steadying herself. The elder responded with a gentle squeeze of reassurance. Not a word was exchanged, yet a silent understanding passed between them. She now knew with certainty she was not entirely alone. She then altered her behavior subtly as if by accident. She deliberately dropped a hairpin near one conspirator, watching his immediate reaction. Instead of helping, he recoiled slightly, eyes darting around to ensure nothing had fallen from her hands that might threaten him. His paranoia betrayed him completely. Another conspirator feigned concern, asking if she was all right, but her voice trembled just a little too much, fear disguised as kindness. She noted both reactions carefully. She tested glances next. A brief, almost invisible stare at her husband's hands, where he kept a ring that symbolized his control, made him clench his fist protectively. A passing gaze at the locked chest in the corner caused two relatives to shift uncomfortably as though she had walked across their graves. These microreactions painted a map of their vulnerabilities far clearer than any spoken confession. When she drifted near the center of the room, she paused intentionally, closing her eyes as if overwhelmed. She was not overwhelmed, not by fear at least. She was listening. The conspirators' whispers changed tone immediately. Some expressed impatience, others nervousness, and one muttered that she must not be allowed near that part of the house again. Their own tongues betrayed them, revealing cracks in their guarded facade. Even the air seemed to shift as she subtly tested boundaries. She placed her hand briefly on a carved wooden table, and its hollow echo suggested a hidden compartment beneath. She caught the flicker of alarm in her husband's eyes as he noticed where her fingers rested. She moved on casually, pretending she had noticed nothing, but inside she stored the detail for later use. To further test loyalties, she pretended to stumble, carefully falling in the direction of a relative rumored to be sympathetic. The woman rushed to catch her, genuine concern shining through. In contrast, two conspirators stepped back immediately, unwilling to risk accidental contact. Allies revealed themselves through instinct. Enemies revealed themselves through avoidance. With practiced calm, she also tested the atmosphere by remaining silent. Sometimes silence provoked more truth than questions ever could. When she stood still and simply watched the room, conversations faltered, eyes averted, and guilt seeped into the air like smoke. The conspirators became increasingly uneasy as her quiet presence lingered, as though they feared she could see right through their schemes. Bit by bit, every small action, glance, stumble, and pause fed her understanding. She now knew exactly who feared her, who doubted her, who underestimated her, and who might help her when the moment arrived. Her careful testing had exposed weaknesses she would soon exploit, and uncovered strengths she could rely on. By the time she returned to her place in the room, she carried more than the hidden key. She carried certainty. Her plan no longer rested on hope but on knowledge. Knowledge gained through patience, perception, and the quiet power of watching without being seen. And now, with the waters fully tested, she was ready to strike when the moment was right. She had tested the waters carefully, noting every reaction, every flicker of doubt, every subtle fear. Now, with the knowledge gained and the key safely hidden, she moved with decisive intent. The time for subtlety had passed. The moment demanded boldness. Every step she took was measured, yet filled with an undercurrent of authority. Her hands rested lightly on the key, feeling its weight and the promise it held. She knew the conspirators believed they controlled the evening, that every outcome had been preordained in their favor. They had not anticipated her intelligence, her patience, or the quiet power she carried hidden beneath her calm demeanor. With a soft exhale, she approached the locked chest at the center of the room, a chest that had been both a symbol of their dominance and a repository for their secrets. With a flick of her wrist, the key slipped smoothly into the lock, turning effortlessly as though it had been waiting for her all along. The sound of the lock clicking open echoed unnaturally, drawing the eyes of every guest. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Her husband froze, his expression oscillating between confusion and panic. The conspirators had underestimated her. The chest opened, revealing letters, documents, and artifacts, proof of deception, manipulation, and greed. Evidence that could dismantle every lie they had built. She did not hesitate. She lifted each item with reverent precision, letting them fall onto the table where all could see. Their schemes lay exposed, tangible and undeniable, before the very eyes of those who had been complicit or unwitting observers. The guests shifted, murmuring anxiously, caught between disbelief and realization. She allowed her gaze to sweep over the room, meeting each conspirator's eyes, letting them feel the weight of her presence. Her husband's jaw tightened, the lines of authority and control he had cultivated suddenly cracking. A single look from her, the recognition of the key's power, was enough to convey the shift. She did not need to shout. The authority in her stance, the clarity in her actions, spoke louder than words ever could. Every artifact on the table reinforced the truth. She was not powerless. She was rightful, prepared, and unshakable. Some of the conspirators attempted to speak, to counter or challenge her, but she moved swiftly, positioning herself so that the key's symbolic weight was clear. She placed a hand atop the chest and spoke with calm certainty. Her voice, firm and steady, narrated the evidence, linking each piece of the puzzle together. The room listened in tense silence as she revealed betrayal after betrayal, secret alliances and manipulations meant to suppress her. Their plots, once hidden in shadows, crumbled under her illumination. The conspirators could no longer hide. The truth, drawn forth by her intelligence and the key she held, neutralized their power entirely. Her husband, who had planned the night as a display of dominance, could not mask his alarm. Every glance he cast revealed the failure of his design. The key, once a simple object in her hand, now symbolized reclamation and justice. She demonstrated not only her discovery but her understanding of the intricate web of deceit, dismantling it piece by piece. Allies and onlookers now shifted their loyalties. The conspirators found themselves isolated, their schemes transparent to all present. There was no need for violence or force. The key's revelation and her skillful orchestration had achieved what brute strength could not. As the night drew on, the guests departed with murmurs of awe and respect. Her husband and co-conspirators remained, their pride stripped away, confronted with the consequences of their actions. She did not gloat, did not strike for vengeance. Instead, she stood tall, exuding control, patience, and wisdom. The key had unlocked more than a chest. It had unlocked her rightful authority and restored balance where it had been disrupted. The wedding night, intended as her humiliation, had transformed into a testament to her courage and intellect. In the days and weeks that followed, her story spread beyond the walls of the home and the village. Children learned of the woman who had turned deceit into revelation, humility into strength, and a trap into triumph. Her tale became a parable of resilience, of patience, of intelligence applied with courage. The key, once thought ordinary, became legendary, a symbol of hidden power, of justice achieved through strategy rather than force. Generations revered her not for submission, but for her ability to perceive, endure, and act decisively when the moment demanded it. She had transformed a night of cruelty into a legacy of honor, proving that wisdom and courage could overturn the darkest of schemes. Her legacy endured, inscribed in the memory of all who heard it. The girl who faced betrayal discovered the key, and through a single bold night reclaimed what was hers, leaving a story of inspiration, vigilance, and the enduring power of insight for all who would come after her.